All right, thank you. I'm going to put my water down over here. Panelists, it's the one that's open when I forget it. Okay, let's see. Uh-oh. Oh, now we've gone too far? Okay. We'll just leave it at that. Live in a big board game family. I bought this game for my family last winter. It's called Wavelength. Anybody here tried it? All right, good fun. So pretty basic concept. You get, as the player who's giving clues, you have a card that gives you a spectrum between 2 points, which might be, it's kind of to define a spectrum. For example, great superpower, boring superpower. And you know where the needle is on the spectrum, and you have to try to get your partners in the game to guess where the needle is. And the closer you are, the more points you get, right? So on that particular spectrum, I might say being able to create ice cubes on demand, and you're thinking, wow, Rob really likes to make cocktails. That would probably be a really fantastic superpower to him. But you also might be thinking, every freezer makes ice cubes on demand. Why would that be a useful superpower, right? So you're a little bit confused about the clue that I've given you. And so maybe you've played this game. Maybe you've played one of these many other games that has this same format, right? I don't know. I'm not going to read them all to you. Where I have some information, and I'm trying to get you to understand that information through a series of maybe overly cryptic clues. And if you haven't played any of these games, maybe you've played my other favorite game that has this same format where I have all the information and I'm trying to get you to understand the information. We call that management. So this asymmetry of information and the cognitive bias that comes with it, which is that I believe you should be able to understand the information that I have because I understand it, is called the curse of knowledge. And I fundamentally believe that this asymmetry and this bias is a huge part of what puts us into situations as leaders where we think that the people working with us and for us are going to be able to execute with less information than they truly need. We believe they already have the information that they need and that they're going to go off and execute excellently. And this, well, it ends in many of the ways that you've all experienced. So in order to talk about this with some concrete examples, I want to talk about some very specific things. And first of all, I'm going to have to talk about me. Now, it's worth noting that earlier today, I had my hand up in the introvert section, in the introvert crowd. I hate talking about myself, but it's very important, I think, to understand the stories, to know what my biases are, how I think, and how I look at the world. So I'm going to suffer through it. I recently read this book by Angela Duckworth, Grit, which is a fantastic read. Just take a look at it if you haven't read it. And a lot of it is, unsurprisingly, about trying new things, sticking with those things, driving through failure, et cetera. But one thing that I read that really stuck with me is this notion that nobody wants to show you all of the grind and the muck that they go through to get to where they are. They just want to tell you how awesome they are now. The great news is I'm still not awesome, and all I have to talk about is the grind and the muck, and I think that's why we all come to things like this. So let's dive into it. So as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about me just to establish some bias. I think that's really important because a great friend of mine, a great CTO, once said to me, never take advice from anyone without understanding their biases. I think that is a fantastic piece of advice. And while I'm not up here trying to shill something to you or move my own pocketbook, I don't have a hidden agenda, I do have a frame of reference for the world. And if you don't understand my frame of reference, you might struggle to understand how I end up making decisions. I recently heard this amazing quote from Jerry Colonna. It was actually on Lenny's podcast. For anyone who doesn't listen to Lenny's podcast, the product podcast, Jerry's an executive coach. And he asked this question. It's one of a set of 4 that he has. How have I been complicit in creating the conditions I say I don't want? And this is the kind of question that I like to ask myself. I know I say that's fun. It can be a very troubling and dark question if you really get into it, but I think it's really important. And so I say it's important for me to come up here and tell you a little bit about me, but I also think it's very important for you to understand you. I don't think you will truly unlock your full leadership potential until you start to deal with your own baggage. Okay, so who am I? I studied engineering physics. I didn't study computer science. I went to school with a bunch of people who ended up building literally rockets. Thanks to ChatGPT, I think ChatGPT knows more about me than I thought. Like, that's probably one of my most brilliant classmates up on top of MC Escher's ladder right there, doing something really useful with this rocket. I'm probably the dumbass with the oversized wrench who's just like hitting the rocket. There's not even bolts on this thing. I don't know what the wrench is for, but I'm like, maybe if I hit it some more, it'll work. Like, when you're in engineering physics, you are surrounded by brilliant, brilliant people. And so I spent those formative years being, someone has to be at the bottom of a bell curve or else you won't have a bell curve, right? So I was the one always looking around saying, how do I get to be as smart as that person? How can I keep up with these people? The other thing that's interesting about engineering physics is this is where I learned software development. This is 136 Spadina Road. This is where my first startup was formed in 1998. And I sat in that room right there, that was the development room, and learned software development from some really, really brilliant software engineers. So I spent the next stage of my career, post-college, sorry, university, I'm back in Canada, learning and feeling like I was always trying to keep up. So my worldview was basically everyone around me is brilliant all the time, and everyone knows more than I do. For anyone familiar with Clifton Strengths Finders, it used to be Gallup Strengths Finders, these are my top 5. So what does this say about me? It says I can consume ridiculous amounts of information, synthesize it into a plan, see around corners to identify any issues with the plan, be confident in my plan, and then have the motivation to execute like mad on my plan. That's how I would spin it in an interview. Sounds amazing. We heard in the last talk about empathy. You know what's not on this page? StrengthsFinders has 34 strengths which they categorize into 4 groups. One of those groups is called relationships, how you relate to others and build teams. Not represented in my top 5. Probably not represented in my top 10. The quote about solo from Reid Hoffman right there, built from the ground up to be a solo artist. Singer-songwriter because I can't find the friends to form a band. That's me, right? So very interesting way of looking at the world. So what happens when you take all that, you think everyone around you knows more and is smarter than you, and everyone is capable of acting independently. Let's take a look at the kind of information that we get when we go out in the world and try to learn about leadership, right? Hey, I'm new to leadership, I should probably learn some things. Push authority to information. Awesome. Everyone's heard this kind of quote before, right? Hey, you should push authority to information. You should delegate more, right? To keep on the theme of skiing and snowboarding from the second talk, after years and years of snowboarding, I decided to take up skiing. Both my kids are like, they raced as skiers. They're really, really phenomenal skiers. So I go out with one of my kids and I'm like, hey, give me some advice, give me some tips. What should I do? Feedback is a gift, right? He says, I think you should be more one with the mountain. That is this quality of advice right here. That's how much information you actually get from that, right? If you dig into this, if you know David Marquet, look at his, his writings or his work, what you find is this really complex program to get people to be able to handle the authority, right? He's got this ladder of leadership where you start at the beginning with the tell me exactly what to do, right? But we hear this advice and we're like, awesome, I'll just let people tell me what they've been doing. I mean, I see some nods. You know how this works out, right? I'm in the future also. Like, it doesn't go well. It doesn't go particularly well. So you really have to understand when you're looking at this, there's a process, right? This is a goal. The thing where I can give the authority to the place that has the information is a goal that I'm trying to get to, and I have to do a lot of hard work to get there. Another great way of looking at it, alignment needs to be around the intent, right? And autonomy should be granted around the actions. Oh, okay, I'll just tell you what it is that we need to do. You go figure out how to do it. This entire, for anyone who's not familiar with the art of action, this entire book is founded around this concept of the back brief, which is I tell you what we're trying to achieve, and then you tell me very specifically, given that context, I am going to take the following actions. Because I can tell when you list back your actions to me that you've misunderstood something about the intent. Or more likely, your kid was texting you while I was explaining it to you to say that they forgot their lunch and they need you to come drop it off at school, and you missed half of what I said. But when I said, you got this, you said, of course I do. Because saying, sorry, I wasn't listening to your boss is not a good look, right? But if I say, great, now that you understand this, what are you going to go do? Then the holes are going to become evident. It doesn't matter why. Trust me, my kid texts me to tell me that he forgot his lunch also. I don't even need a quote from this book. Marty Kagan will tell you right on the cover, empowered teams win. Empowered product teams outperform every other kind of product team, right? But our definition of empowerment needs work. What's amazing about this book is you don't even get to read about product until you're halfway through the book. Because the first half is about hiring people, making sure they know what they're supposed to be doing, hiring the absolute best people, and then giving them feedback constantly because they're still not at the level that they need to be at in order for you to achieve what you need in your context. All right, so we took a little look at my sort of psychological profile, and now we have an understanding of skimming the high levels of the advice. What happens? What happens when we take all this and put it into the world? So David Marquet, who I referenced earlier, talks about handing over control in alignment with rising clarity and competence. Right? Those are the two factors that he's looking for. Number one, competence. Do you have the skills to do the job that needs to get done? And number two, clarity. Do you understand what it is that we're trying to do and why? And that ladder that we looked at earlier is about laddering up as those things are achieved. So this is where we all think the people in our organization are, right? In the upper right of clarity and competence. That's because that's what we dream, and we have this sort of curse of knowledge, whether that's we believe they have the skills, we believe they have the understanding. We're putting them very ambitiously and possibly naively, or at least I am, up in this upper right corner. But where are they really? And to be clear about who these folks are, new hire bringing into the organization, a recent promotion, or a product team that's acting as a group, right? So let's talk about that new hire. You went through your very rigorous interview process. You now know everything that you'll ever know about that person, right, after you spend 30 minutes with them on the phone. And you're ready to bring them into the organization and achieve great results. Let's say that this is you, right? Mostly talking about leaders here. So you've got an organization, and probably you have some other managers or directors off to the side, but someone left and you're managing a team of 12 folks directly, right? So you go out and you hire someone to run that team. That's a pretty sensible thing to do. And so how does your org chart change? Now you talk to your new hire that you just put in place, right? Because they are responsible for managing the team. And that sounds awesome. You've communicated very effectively. The little orange lines are sort of the way that you think about things. But you brought in someone who has a different perspective on the world. I mean, you were looking for some change, right? Maybe there's something about the team that you wanted to shift. So you brought in someone and you sort of hand them the reins. Please run this for me. Now, that sounds great, but they have a totally different perspective. And we've had this happen very clearly in our organization with someone who comes in and feels like, oh, I know things that need to change in this organization, but I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to run my team properly. I would say that story ends. The manager that I'm thinking of ultimately left, and all of the people that were still in the company after working for them said, oh, thank God, we finally don't have to work for that person anymore. But they never told us while they were working for that person, right? This person has been selected. They have all this clout from above. They obviously are defining the culture and organization that we're going to work in. I actually had to look really hard to find a reference that describes this situation, but it's covered in The Manager's Path by Camille Fournier. And this is a very small snippet of what happens in Camille's description when you hire someone who doesn't have aligned values with your organization. Either you're going to have to fire them right away, or they're going to cause havoc, and then you'll probably have to fire them eventually. In this case that I'm describing, that person left because they felt their own strain over the misfit. But what really comes out of this is hiring for values alignment. One of the things that we value at Circle CI, we have a set of guiding principles, is learning fast or optimizing for learning. And so it doesn't matter who I'm interviewing. I interview other C-suite execs, I interview IC engineers. I always ask them to tell me about a time that they failed and what they've learned from it. And it's not just a checkbox item. The way that people talk about failure tells me how they will be able to perform in our environment. And that's great. As an employee, you also want to know that you're aligned with the organization that you're walking into, right? If it doesn't align with your values, you're going to have a very, very bad time. You're going to end up leaving anyway. Then talk. You need to be talking with this new hire. Maintain your relationships with those skips. They worked for you forever. Just go talk to them, see how they're doing and understand. And then finally, you'll see changes in performance of teams. If anything pops out, make sure you go ask some questions. You need to stay close to that person when you bring them in. Promotion. So here's an interesting one. Fun idea. When you get promoted, you go back to being bad at your job. Nobody wants to tell you that. You were exceeding expectations yesterday, and today you're kind of below expectations. And that's okay. The reason I put you into that job is because I see the potential to grow you through it, right? But that doesn't mean that I can't talk to you about it, right? Maybe yesterday I could leave you to do anything because I knew you were going to execute really, really well. But now your competency expectation has gone up significantly. And as you make that transition, we have to go back to a much tighter conversation about the things that you're struggling with. As an aside, you've also just handed your new promotion a VIP pass. They get to walk into all kinds of new rooms and represent you in ways that they couldn't represent you before. And even though you're thinking, sure, you're not quite ready to do this, but I've moved you up into this new role and we're going to grow together, everyone else in the organization is saying, oh, I have to listen to them now. Because now they're a senior manager, or now they're a director, or now they're a staff engineer, or a senior staff engineer, whatever your ladders are, right? So you have to pay very close attention to that. You can't walk around with them and say, you know, whatever, Michael. I know Michael is now a director, but Michael's not quite ready yet, so don't listen to everything that Michael says. That's not going to work, right? So you have to work with them and coach them and be present where they're present to make sure that you're giving them the feedback and can give them real feedback as they grow. So maybe they were at number 6 on the ladder, and now they're down to number 3, right? Don't just tell me what you've done. Let's talk about it before you do it. I'll ask you some questions about what you're thinking you're going to do, and then let's get some feedback early and make some adjustments so you can go do the right thing. And we'll talk about it, we'll learn from it, but I can't just expect you in that new role to be off and running. And that's okay. That's okay. But we're very uncomfortable doing that. So last. This one's a little interesting to me because it's more about group dynamics than individuals. But let's talk about product teams. So let's say this is your organization. You know, these are managers of teams. You got some directors, and I don't know what your role is, but something like that, right? Everybody has an org that looks something like this. This is your perspective. This is what you understand. You probably know a lot about what your directors are doing, and a little bit about what your EMs are doing and what their teams are doing, right? So that's fine. That's probably useful. Like, I don't even know I don't know what this team is over here. I don't know what they're doing. That's okay. I trust their director, right? And going all the way back to the curse of knowledge, though, what I believe is that they also see everything that I see, right? They're making decisions based on the decisions that I would make. Oops. This is their perspective. And I love this expression that I learned from thinking in systems, bounded rationality. This team is going to make very rational decisions within the context of what they understand. And what they understand is a little bit of what their director is saying, because the rest of the time they're not really paying attention. They have a friend over in this team and one in that team, and otherwise they just see their worldview, right? And so they're going to maybe they use RabbitMQ. We're a big RabbitMQ shop. And maybe they think that whoever wrote the shared library for RabbitMQ didn't do a great job with the interface, or maybe they missed a feature that I need. And getting another team to work on that is going to slow me down. So I'll just write my own RabbitMQ library. Thank you for the nods in the back. I think we have 6. Except now I have a different one that doesn't fix half the things that the first one fixed, right? And so as we grow in teams, team count on the X, we want the cost per team to go down. This is economy of scale, right? This is what we're trying to get as engineering organizations. And as leaders, we see that. This is what we actually get. 6 RabbitMQ implementations, 5 different programming languages, a different version of every stack and library that's ever been out there. This is what the team sees. I tried to think of all the things that get faster and easier when people start making their own decisions in this bounded rationality, this bounded context. Sometimes they're faster. But as I just said, they have to write their own tools. They have to patch all their own libraries that they wrote. Maybe they're in a different programming language. We've managed to stamp that out. We've had to stamp it out a few times. Whatever it is that they're choosing to do to go off the rails, they have to manage that. I spent a second and tried to think of a couple of things that get worse. And if you're asking yourself, how many of these 16 things go away if you add a service mesh, the answer is none of them. They get even worse. So again, if you go back down and do the work, what you see is, yes, we give autonomy to people to go make decisions, but we want to both have accountability, right? Your product teams are trying to deliver value to customers, not deliver new RabbitMQ libraries. Thanks for setting the framing for RabbitMQ, by the way. And second, we have to define the boundaries within which they can make those decisions, right? Here are the things that you have autonomy around. It's the business logic, it's the capabilities that we're delivering to our users. We, as leaders, somewhere up that stack are responsible for seeing the things that are not useful to give autonomy on and creating the constraints. So to wrap it all up, a few things that I would leave you with. Number one, align on your beliefs. Make sure that people who are in the organization are aligned around why they're there and what you're trying to achieve and how you want to work. Number two, you're probably projecting too much onto your people. Maybe just play charades with them or something. You can figure it out, right? The ones that guess all your answers might be the ones that you can give a little more space to. Might not be the best test, but maybe on your work away, if you have one of those, could be a fun thing to do. Number three, a little bit out of left field, but very important to me, came from someone that I trust a lot. Say this all the time. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? When you see this problem in your organization, saying, well, I really hope someone fixes that, is not going to work out for you. If you're in this room, you're a leader. Take some ownership of it. Last, read the whole book. Don't just read the pithy quotes. People will throw them at you all day long. Figure out where the real challenges are in your system, in your organization, and honestly with you, right? Sit down and think about what you bring to the table, how you're looking at the world, and therefore how you're looking at your team, and you'll have a lot more success getting them to that autonomy. All right, thank you. A couple of minutes for questions.
So if you'd like to ask Rob a question, you can scan the QR code.
Or just throw up your hand if it's too much work. Should have had a magic trick prepared for the awkward moment wherever. I was going to tell you I had this really janky Band-Aid on my thumb, and I was trying to explain it, and now I'm just going to tell you that I cut myself cutting a lemon earlier today. The idea that you're holding a lemon in your hand and slicing through it, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Oh, well, thank you. Does that mean that I said everything? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, have you run into situations where you try to convey intent and then your report doesn't agree with the intent?
Oh, okay, I'll repeat the question. Have I run into situations where I try to convey intent and the report doesn't agree with the intent? Yeah. I don't think that was a yes or no question. Is there what do you do?
Like, have you ever debated it infinitely and kind of run into circles?
Yeah, I mean, we're all engineering leaders, right? So, or I assume that's that's kind of the makeup of a lot of engineers. Do you run in circles? Yes, I think there's something before that, like there's a trust building. We heard a lot about trust earlier. I sort of mock my own strengths, but building trust to get to that conversation, I think, is really important, right? And so it might depend. Honestly, your brand new report is probably not going to argue with you much, but one of the people that works for me directly hired me 10.5 years ago at Circle CI. We have a great relationship. We've worked together forever. He's more than happy to tell me what he thinks, and I respect what he thinks. So I think as a leader, one of the most important, like, yes, you have to make a decision, commit, and go, but if you come into the room with, like, this is what we're doing, and no one gets to talk about it, you're gonna lose the room really quickly. And I think, you know, you like to sort of take that offline or whatever, but modeling that you are willing to engage and hear from people, I think, is a really important part of getting the next piece of feedback and the next piece of feedback. Like Michael talked earlier about not getting that feedback. I think modeling how you receive it and acting on it is really valuable. Now all the questions came in and we ran out of time.